We are officially recording, dude.
Okay,
So welcome.
I'm on board.
Yeah, well, appreciate you being here, Mr. Schinker. Say hello.
Hello.
So welcome back. We're going to start with the scripture reference for today. If you okay with starting with Bible right away?
Oh, I love it.
You kind of dig that, right? Psalm 34:18 from the New Living Translation. And here you go. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. You're familiar with that one, Mike?
I have quoted that quite often in the last several years, actually.
Yeah, and it's one of those truths that we're banking on that are true that God is closest to us when we are mourning, when we're brokenhearted. And this translation, I picked this particular translation because it uses the word rescues and crushed. So
Very vivid.
it is, and it's the difference between we don't really need, although comfort is nice, and I think there's a place for it. And when you're utterly crushed, you don't really need comfort. You need somebody to rescue you. I envision during natural disasters, earthquakes, and such that people are crushed under heavy amounts of rubble and things. They need to be rescued immediately so they can continue to live. And that's what that scripture means to me. That's how it speaks to me. That when we see people that whose spirits are just utterly crushed and they're devastated through grief and loss and pain, that God is not only close to them, but he's also rescuing them. So I think rescue's the word that really impacted me when I read that this morning. So that's why I picked it. And it's going to be pertinent for the first couple of things that I want to talk to you about.
It's ironic because during those circumstances when people endure, especially non-believers, endure something traumatic or tragic, their first thought often is that God is gone. But
It
that's,
is.
that's totally contrary to what the Bible says.
You're right. It's easy to feel that way though, and honestly, I felt that way. I felt somewhat abandoned and left all alone by God. And then you go back into his word. It takes the spiritual disciplines to actually open up the Bible when your spirit is crushed, so to speak. But when you reread some of the things that you've read in better times, when you are feeling crushed, they're still true, and you can stand on those. And then you'll, as you open your heart and you're willing to let God come in and rescue you, that those feelings quickly dissipate because that loneliness doesn't last forever. You think that's true?
Well, if you believe beyond what is in your mind, if it's embedded in your heart, then you will understand the comfort that God is more than willing to offer.
Yeah, transferring that head knowledge to the heart. I think that's a good word.
Head knowledge is also comes and goes.
Yeah,
It's
it does. Changes a lot, doesn't it?
yep.
Based on kind of how we feel. All right, I got a really sad story to tell you. So I'm watching ESPN this morning, and the lead story, there's an NHL hockey player. His name's Johnny Gaudreau. They call him Johnny Hockey, plays for the Columbus NHL franchise. So he and his brother Matthew, so Johnny was 31, Matthew 29, they were out riding their bicycles last night in their hometown in New Jersey. They were both killed by a drunk driver. And as if that's not awful enough, here's the part that's really tough to even say. They were in town because they were to be groomsmen in their sister's wedding, which is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. So you hear stuff like that, and it's obviously leading the sports news because he's a professional athlete, and
Yeah.
it's an unimaginable tragedy. But these aren't the only that's not the only family that's dealing with things like this today.
No.
It's all around, and I just thought, man, that my heart just goes out to them. I instantly it's God does it has done an interesting thing in my heart because I got pretty upset. I don't know who this guy is, to be honest with you. I'm not a hockey person. I'd never heard his name until this morning.
Okay.
But as I'm hearing this story, I'm getting upset. My heart is just hurt, and I'm getting kind of welled up, and I'm just thinking of the loss that this family's feeling, and maybe maybe I'm a little more sensitive to it because of what how our week has been. So we had a loss in our tribe this week. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Quite unexpected, which makes the shock value even worse.
right. It does. So I'll describe this scene a little bit for the audience.
Okay.
So I was meeting with my friend Jason Fett at Lifegate Church here in Omaha at their coffee shop, their Stories Coffee Shop. It's about 9 a.m. And as we're sitting there talking and hanging out, my phone buzzes and I look down and you're calling me, which
Yes.
is a little bit strange because I'm not a big talk on the phone person. It's more, we'll communicate through text and things. So I
No.
thought if Mike's calling me at 9 in the morning, I should probably answer. So
Yes.
when I answered, you said, good morning, and then you asked me if I had heard from anybody from our men's ministry at church, and I said, "Oh, no." Um, and you said, "Well, I have something to tell you, and it's bad." And I thought, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm ready. Go ahead." And then you paused again, and you said, "No, man, I need you to brace for this because this is bad." And your words, I don't think I'll ever forget. You said, "Mark Jeffrey suffered a heart attack early this morning and he's deceased." And that's even tough to say as, I sit here and recount how it happened.
Yes.
Um, to let the audience know who Mark was to us, and we can talk about what he meant to us as well. But so Mark is a guy that's been around that we met through our men's ministry at church, and we have this tight knit little group. We actually call it the tribe. I call the listeners of the show that are regulars the tribe, but this is our tribe, and there's half a dozen people or so I would consider kind of in that inner circle of our tribe, and he's one of these guys. And um, I reconnected with Mark about a year and change ago, so early in summer of 2023, and I hadn't been around him too much for about the past year. And when I was going through my divorce and things, um, we met about once a week. He was super caring and just loving and listened to me and wasn't judgy. And I was really happy to reconnect with Mark, and his friendship meant so much to me. And then we made a point to we were getting together all the time. And I'll share with you the path that he had recently gotten on is he had struggled for a long time with some extra weight and had let himself go physically. And he used to be a really strong and shape guy, and he just let himself go, like a lot of us do.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about that very honestly and openly, and I remember it bumping him a little bit. And
Expected.
for sure. And I said, I just want to tell you the truth, and I also want to tell you that I can help you. And he said, I appreciate you. Let's talk about what that looks like. And so he and I had several candid conversations about some changes that he could make and things. And he was one of those guys that in the last 6 weeks had really begun on the path.
Yes.
Um, and he lost some weight and he got stronger and his confidence level. I just remember being around Mark the last month. You could just feel it when you were around him. His energy was just different, and
Right.
he had a new vigor and excitement for life, and it was just amazing to see. So when I received that news, it was crushing. Mark leaves behind a wife, Nikki, and he also leaves behind 3 children. And it's we I don't grieve for Mark because Mark is where he should be,
Right.
and he's where we're all going to be, and where we, I think, in some degree, long to be. But I do mourn and grieve for us as his friends, and most importantly, for his family.
Yes.
And they are going to have needs that need to be met, and those needs are going to range from financially to they're going to need to have some things done at their home and their lawn care and snow removal and things that Mark he was just handling. And there's a void there that's not just the void of not having the man in the house, but the void of there's going to be some practical things that we as men are going to need to step up and fill those gaps. And I couldn't tell you if Nikki's ever listened to this show or not, but I hope that if she does, that she knows that she's not alone. She'll never be alone, and that there's a group of men who will surround her and show her kindness, love, and compassion and understanding. And we're going to do whatever needs to be done as long as we're down here uh,
Right.
until we go to be home with Mark. So I just want her and her family to know that, and I know you echo that as well. I'd like you to share your thoughts about Mark as well, because you've known him a long time too.
Yes. I remember the first time I ever met him was on a volunteer project with our church. At that time, it was called Trinity, and there was actually a ministry that assisted people who were unable to do something on their own, either because of lack of skill, lack of finances, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested in serving, which should be an elemental part of the Christian life in the first place. It's not
Agreed.
a big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus washed his disciples' feet, and when he was done, he said, "Do this. I'm showing you an example."
Okay.
So there was an opportunity one Saturday, a couple uh, with a baby weren't really financially able to pay for somebody to come paint the outside of their house. So I volunteered to do that, and I didn't know who else was going to be there. And so I met Mark on that Saturday morning. He had brought one of his, actually his, who's the oldest son right now, Gabe. Uh, we salute you, Gabe, because not violating any confidentiality, he is deployed at this point, serving our country.
Yeah.
And he was probably maybe 5, 6, 7 years old and just slopping a bunch of paint on the wall with a big old brush. And that was my first exposure to Mark, a man of good humor. I'll prove that because right now I'm wearing a T-shirt that he had given me. It says Dracula's Castle, Transylvania. Doesn't mean anything to anybody that's listening, but to me, it was a very funny event because he was always teasing me about my Transylvanian heritage. So he presented this shirt in front of 20 men at the Teen Challenge House and got quite a big laugh out of it.
That's amazing.
But he was a man of God first, very well educated in the scriptures. But like we mentioned earlier, the head knowledge is nice, but that's not going to translate into the life that Jesus has called us to do,
Yeah.
is serving and being an example. And Mark was an example of a father, a husband, a person who cares about his friends, and his exposure with Dave Ballard, God rest his soul, also at the Teen Challenge was exemplary. He cared about the men there, as all of us who showed up there at that house locally. And over time, the depth of his fervor for the kingdom of God became more and more apparent, and one that any men around him hoped to emulate and to imitate. Um, when you mentioned the call I gave you, it was beyond shock because it was out of nowhere. He was doing well. There was no symptoms, no health issues, and all of a sudden, in an instant, he's gone. So he will be sorely missed. Kind of get choked up. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry.
No, no reason to be. I totally understand.
It's also coupled with the fact that another fellow from our church group, Gene Davey, uh, also passed away probably within 24 hours of Mark.
Yeah.
He was a truck driver and he was in Reno, Nevada, and something happened, either an accident or an assault, which put him in the hospital on life support for several days. And of course, when one gets to that point of no return to health or normalcy, the family has to make a decision.
Sure.
The kids were out there and they said, Dad, we love you, but we got to let you go. And so, according to his pre-ascribed wishes, he became an organ donor for 3 people. He may have saved 3 other lives in his passing. These are exemplary men.
They are.
And I'm not sure if I can even count myself within the scope of this degree of manhood. I hope to be. I'm aspiring to be that kind of man.
Yeah.
I know.
You are. You're a humble guy. So I'll say it for you. You are that man. You're that man to me in my life and in the lives of a lot of other dudes as well. Um, this has been it's been a tough stretch. There's no
Yes.
doubt about it. So, it's one of those seasons where we reflect upon, okay, let's remember to tell people that we care about them and we love them, and let's let petty things go. And um, it's so off. It's one of the saddest things is how much it takes tragedy to get us to that place emotionally. And
Well, but in reality, the Bible and even Jesus said, "Hey, you're but a transient being here. It sounds trite, but here today, gone tomorrow. You just don't know."
it's true. It's true. We press on, and we, you know, we've got lives to lead, and we want to honor those that have gone to be with Jesus before us. And Mark wasn't the first of those men. He will not be the last of
Yeah.
the men. And we try to do our best to honor their memory by how we live, and then we need to be there for their families and their loved ones, and so he's not forgotten. And I know our group, and we'll all step up and be there for his family, and that means I know that would mean the world to Mark. So I think it's well said, and let's move forward.
Okay.
Tough as it might be, we're going to pivot into today's show topic. So,
What are we talking about?
oddly enough, you're here because you have a blog, don't you, buddy?
Yes, I do. It's I think I started in night and oh, let's see, 2014, I believe. I've got about 60 plus posts on a variety of different topics, something that moves me, something that's interesting,
Yeah.
very history oriented. I wrote about there's one titled The First and Last Voyage of the Titanic. Always been kind of struck by that
Yeah.
ship that was deemed even God can't sink this ship.
Right.
Went down in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Uh, Worthy of being written about, especially the folks who endured that. Uh, Not trying to be morbid here at all, but Judy, my dear wife, and I have sort of a joke when we're discussing desserts that are to be had at our house, and
Okay.
she may pass on it because she's very sweets conscious.
Mhm.
And I always tell her, well, remember those ladies that passed up the chocolate mousse that night on the Titanic?
Dude.
Didn't do them too much good, did it? They might as well have enjoyed life, eat, drink, and be merry.
Eat the cake once in a while.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love it. And I love your blog. And so it's important. There's a lot of important topics in it as well as being entertaining. What I want to do is I'll throw out your favorite word. We're going to unpack your latest blog post. I keep wanting to say episode. It's not an episode. I also want to make sure that our listeners, that our tribe can know about it, be informed, and get automatically signed up to receive it and go back and check out all the blog posts that you've
Oh,
made up
yes.
to this point. So tell everybody how they can do that. And while you do that, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to open this door to let these cats out that are just clawing at this thing. So go ahead and tell the audience how they can do that.
Okay. Well, it's quite simple. It's a blog. It's a website. It's hosted by WordPress. And the best way to get onto it, I suggest the only way you should get onto it, although you can receive notices via your phone once you're signed up to receive them, you'll get a notice that says, hey, there's a new post. I suggest that you go to your computer and go to Google and plug in www.crossingpaths, one word, .net, and it'll take you to the full blog page, which features topics that you can look at, and it'll take you to the most recent post, and then you can keep scrolling down to the ones that preceded it. So it's very simple. I've got some political things, some very scriptural type commentary. So
I look forward to them. They're amazing. You're an incredible writer and super creative dude. So I think that the audience is going to get a lot of value from it. So for today's episode, what I thought we would do is I want the audience to be able to hear you read your latest post in your own voice. Uh, the way I like to absorb audio books when I do audio versions is I like to have the author read them. And I think it just brings more emotion and the intent of the work. So I wanted you to come on and actually read the last blog post, and we can stop and talk periodically throughout it. I'll stop you if something catches my eye and my mind, and if you want to do the same, you feel free to do that as well. It's a long form podcast. We're not in any rush, so I just want you to breeze to go through it at whatever pace you'd like. So let's dive in. You ready to go?
yeah, and I'm a much better writer than I am a reader. So indulge me if I'm, not exactly the best. But here the title, which was a concept or topic, that subject matter that was on my heart for quite some time, based on the last year, 2 years. Let's be specific, 3.5 years. How about that?
I think that's right. I think we know what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. The title is God Bless America? Question mark. Why? Question mark.
Here you go.
Okay. Intriguing.
Yeah.
Years ago, I used to see the words God Bless America on bumper stickers along with Pray the Rosary and Keep on Truckin'. Apparently, the fad has gone the way of lava lamps, mood rings, and the pet rock, along with other oddities of the 70s and 80s.
Nice.
Interestingly, the phrase was invoked almost as an exclamation point at the end of many of the speeches at the recent Republican Party's national convention. Not surprisingly, the sentiment was notably absent at the Democratic National Convention. I do occasionally hear people express the phrase both in and out of churchy environments. With what I have seen develop in this country during the last, well, here I say 10 years or so, it makes me wonder, though, why would we expect or even suppose that God would bless such a flagrantly reprobate country? Our seats of government have become dens of corruption, lobbied by self-serving money mongers like the military industrial giants who promote the artifacts of war as if it were a business for propagating endless conflicts for profit, which they are.
They are.
What happened to my vote? Where are the of the people, by the people, for the people representatives? It's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but without a happy ending. Now, there's a lot of younger folks out there who've never heard of the movie, Mr. Smith,
Right.
Washington. It was a Frank Capra movie of 1939 starring Jimmy Stewart. Probably more recognizable of Capra's work is the Christmas one, It's a Wonderful Life, also
Mm.
Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
But it's about a young, idealistic fellow from, I guess you'd say the common man demographic of our country.
Hmm.
Did win a Senate seat and goes to Washington with the idealistic impression that he's going to make a difference. Well, almost immediately, he runs in face to face bluntly with the political machine, which is, once they find out his perspective, which is totally contrary to their means of controlling the legislature. Their point is just to, hey, little man, you got to just go home and sit on your front porch and whittle a stick or something.
Right.
So it's quite a good movie. In the end, he does make some progress, and it's a happy ending. But I don't think we have a happy ending right now. Okay.
Not yet, we don't.
Any
Continue on, buddy.
okay. Why are we seeking the favor of God on a society that has devolved into a death cult? Okay, that's pretty forward, isn't it?
It is. Let's go.
Abortion is murder, not a woman's right to reproductive care. Isn't that kind of an oxymoron? Let's get rid of the baby for reproductive purposes.
Yeah, it's certainly there's some irony to it.
Apparently, some are unaware because we conveniently threw out the Ten Commandments decades ago. Thou shalt not kill. Remember that? Of
Heard
course,
of it.
perversion used to be scandalous, hushed away in a closet, but is now pridefully paraded in drag queen story hours in front of kindergartners.
I love that you use the word pridefully. So nice pun.
Quite purposefully selected.
Sure.
Don't expect me to respect your rainbow banner when you mock me and young Christian students for wanting to pray around the school flagpole with Old Glory unfurled. And by the way, there's only one national anthem worthy of being sung at any sporting event. Who would not jump up and stand for those who have fallen, who gave the last full measure of patriotism so we can think and speak according to our God-given rights?
Let's pause there.
Okay. I'm
Let's
referring to, of course.
I'm gonna take a beat here, then I'm gonna back up and I'm gonna talk about there's only one national anthem worthy of being sung.
Well, you kind of know what I'm talking about.
Well, I'm gonna say it.
Okay.
So I do know what you're talking about, and I do agree. And I think that there is a lot of division in this country, and we're being told that it's along racial lines. And I've said this so many times in the show. Yeah, we still have some work to do, but I can tell you that the amount of blatant racism and lack of opportunity for people of color right now is less than it's been in any course in history, by my estimation. So what sows further division is when we're watching a sporting event and they play the black national anthem, as they call
That's
it.
what they
And that to me seems racist. And I can't be offended by anything. And I'm not allowed to say that something's racist because I'm a white male. But having a black national anthem is racist. We have a national anthem, and we need to address the problems that are making African American people feel so disenfranchised that they think they need to play a second national anthem. Let's have those conversations. But there's one national anthem, and I'm going to stand by that. And I'm
it's been
happy to have that debate and conversation with anyone that'd like to come on the show and have it.
okay.
So I like that you brought that up. I feel strongly about that, and thank you for letting me get my 2 cents in there.
Um, how many neighborhoods can you go through where you won't see a pride flag? Parts of Dundee, where my daughter lives, on the eastern end of Dundee, there is an entire house that is painted with the rainbow stripes from foundation to the roof.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'd say to that.
But comma,
Mhm.
how many American flags are you seeing being? We also have pride. I have pride for my flag, and it's out on my front porch.
Sure. I would say that it's those folks' right
It is.
to fly their pride flags and to paint their house how they want to paint their house. Um, I don't have an issue with them doing that. My issue comes when they have an issue with me flying my American flag.
That's the point.
Yeah. So, um,
I drive past one every day on Miami Street going to my house. I have no intention of going to their house and knocking on their door and say, "Do you know what Jesus said?" and all this stuff. Take
yeah,
it down and trample it or burn it or
yeah,
whatever. I would go to those people, I don't know, male or female, that even lives there, and I would say, if I ever had a conversation walking in the neighborhood, I'd say, "Hey, how you doing?"
Sure.
You know.
Same. Yeah,
So
we would show them love and respect because
all
that's
I'm,
how we should.
and it's this big deal about the folks on that end of things are constantly complaining that Christians are hateful and bigots and all that sort of thing. But come to my church. Come to Midtown on 55th and Leavenworth anytime we have a men's meeting or service on Sunday. You will not find hateful people.
Nope. Same. I feel the same. We are part of the same church. We go to different campuses here in our metro area, but I feel the same. I think that's spot on. And we should show them love and respect. And I would expect the same from them. I have a huge American flag tattoo. It takes up my lower half of my entire um, right leg. And in the summertime, when I'm in shorts a lot, it gets some looks. And I
Yeah,
can tell you, when I had that done several years ago, I wouldn't have thought that would be something that would be causing controversy as I'm walking around my community, but it does. Because people think something about you. It's not, oh, that guy must love America. Just like you said, a lot of people look at that big tattoo and they're thinking, oh, this guy's some sort of racist. This guy's a bigot. I'm a homosexual person, so he probably hates me. And none of that's true. I love America and what America should stand for. And that's why I represent that on my body. And I'm proud of it and I'm happy that I do. And
it
that's
is a historical fact. If you look into the any of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that you will find out that Jesus did not hang out with self-righteous, condemning people.
that's right.
Not in that crowd. He was with the. I'm a sinner. He ate with sinners. Oh my gosh, he's eating with sinners. Well, yes, that's why he's there.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Let's do it. Go on.
Okay, here's another thing, another aspect that we're going to get into. Does not the Bible and the Constitution say we are all created equal? Whatever prompted us to engage, or excuse me, exchange merit for equity, that mentality is not only bizarre, but dangerous. When I board that 747, I want the pilot and the crew and the air traffic controllers to be the best that they can be and do their job based on skill and their and not on their physical characteristics or supposed lack of privilege.
Yeah. How much do we need to say about that? The DEI nonsense is starting to fade away.
Actually,
Uh,
yeah,
Institution after institution, universities, corporations are abandoning their DEI programs. They don't work. It's costing money. It's dangerous in certain circumstances, as you've just pointed out, and it's nonsense and it needs to go. It's an affirmative action nightmare on steroids, and I'm happy that it's going by the wayside, and our country is going to be better for it.
you always need examples. You can't just be platitudinous and whatever and just say these comments. And well, let me get you an example. And I'm not, God bless the Secret Service.
Oh boy. Good. Go on.
Recently, with the attempt on Trump's life at Butler, Pennsylvania, we saw the response of the Secret Service jump up there on that stage and take care of him. But there were some big guys there, and I'm not being a badass on the female aspect of things, but there were some female agents there that were obviously a little short and maybe not as responsive to a something that happens really quick there, because it's obvious if you watch the film of their effort to cover him. And I can't tell you whether it was an equity situation, but it just seemed like you should have had some beefy guys up there. You got to have some Shaquille O'Neals up there.
So here's my thoughts on that. I don't know how you could make a valid argument and tell me that you believe that a 5'3", 75-pound overweight female can
Or
be a better protector than a former special operations operator male who is 6'4", ripped and in shape and strong. You're never going to convince me of that. And when I saw that going on, my mind went to this line. I said it out loud to myself. I said, did they run out of operators? So was the only hiring option these people that are incapable? If you're guarding a 250-pound man, to me, you need to be able to lift up a 250-pound man.
yeah,
That's my feelings, because there might be an instance where that person needs to be picked up, thrown over your shoulder, and taken to safety. And if you're unable to do that, you shouldn't have that particular job. Now, there's other roles in the Secret Service, and I certainly open up the hiring window in those. But for operators, they need to have certain strength requirements. And I think that if you're looking at a lot of the protectors that we saw around former President Trump on that day in Pennsylvania, I think that you're going to find that the best and brightest and the strongest weren't protecting him at every angle.
I have no proof, no documentation to present that this is a blatant example of equity, but I have a suspicion.
I think it certainly is. I don't think you need a document to tell you that. I don't need a degree in meteorology to go outside and know it's hot. Um, so let's
Oh,
move on.
all right. Well, let's look at this other aspect here. Thomas Jefferson, brilliantly in his Declaration, believed that the purpose of government was to secure our rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everybody has heard about that.
For sure.
You don't have to have a class in civics to have heard that once somewhere.
No.
Today, we have a diabolical ruling class that will legislate everything it can to render us perpetually broke, fat, stupid, gullible, entitled, lazy, sick, and godless.
Preach it.
That makes us easier to control, body and soul. Public education has become an assembly line cranking out lies and hate for family, faith, and righteousness. Reading, writing, and arithmetic have given way to rules for radicals. I like the alliteration there.
For
A
sure.
popular saying in the 60s, which I lived through as a young man, during the hippie and anti-Vietnam War was love it or leave it. That was addressed to the anti-Vietnam people that were
Yeah,
protesting in the streets. Peace, love, understanding. Also sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but that's another topic. If you hate America so much, move to Venezuela or Cuba. That's even closer. Gorge yourself to death, literally, on socialism there.
yeah, well said. We've covered that on the show before. You know my feelings on that. I believe that big food is in cahoots with big pharma. They want to feed you poison and then put you on medication to allow you to continue to live long enough to purchase more poison and more medicine. And it's a never ending treadmill of mediocrity and metabolic sickness. I don't know what the answer is other than personal excellence. This is one of those areas where you got to get off the train the government wants you on. Stop marching onto those rail cars. Take care of you and yours and focus on personal excellence. Get yourself fit, healthy, capable. Lift weights, eat meat and fruit, drink water, go walking, lean into your faith, learn about Jesus Christ and his teachings, and farm your own land aside from the government's assistance. That would be my advice there.
And that is quite appropriate. Going back to the initial question about God bless America, question mark. Should we expect this brazen idolatry to go on forever? Empires before us have all but vanished in the dust, a mere academic paragraph in the annals of history. In his latest book, The End of Everything, military historian Victor Davis Hanson describes a series of events that span the age of antiquity to the conquest of the New World to show how societies descend into barbarism and obliteration. In the stories he uses of Thebes, Carthage, Constantinople, in Tenochtitlan, which is actually modern day Mexico City. It was Mexico City is built on the ruins of
Mm.
the central capital of the Aztec Empire,
Yeah.
like maybe 100 feet under it. But anyway, it's there if you look for it. He he uh, he depicts wars, drama, violence, and folly, highlighting the naivete that plagued the vanquished and the wrath that justified mass slaughter. Hansen delivers a warning. This is where it is appropriate to us, to his contemporary readers, to heed the lessons of obliteration, lest we blunder into catastrophe once again. And you've heard the expression, history repeats itself.
Sure.
Most often than not, a society can be blindly suicidal. Now, I want to stop here and just comment about, well, who's Victor Davis Hanson? Maybe if you've been if you watch Fox News, he's a Fox News contributor frequently. He's a 70-year-old, very intelligent, very well-read, very studied historical military historian. He is presently a senior fellow of the Hoover Institute. He's a professor, author, and commentator. And it takes him hundreds of pages to describe his premise about what I just spoke about, the end of an empire.
Mm.
Um, in order to do that, I did look up a book review, which summarizes much better than I could. And what he talks about is these attempts on these four situations, which the aggressor sets out to deliberately erase the physical presence of the victim community. In those cases, it was by mass killing and enslavement. And in some of them, it was the destruction of the urban infrastructure. Now, I know it's very academic. It sounds very heavy, but listen to me read this one more time and think if you can relate any probably non warlike efforts that a government could take to
Okay.
deliberately erase the physical presence of the victim community.
Okay. That's good.
That can be done without violence.
Yeah.
You can do it by impoverishing the middle class to death,
Yep.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Any comments about how that might be relatable to certain agendas of a political party that we're
Yeah, I think you know my feelings on that, as does the audience, that they need to take it's Saul Alinsky's playbook is what they're working. That's what he's talking about. I mean,
and may I refer your viewers and listeners to your prior
mm,
podcast about exactly what we're talking about, the 8 rules for radicals.
yeah, and that's what I think. That's the direct analogy here. They want you. They're going to tax you to death. They want you on assistance. They want to control your health care. They want you poor. They want our nation in further debt. They want to take away your opportunity to defend yourself against tyranny by stripping you of your weapons.
You can be canceled.
Yeah, yeah,
What's
same exactly. We know the playbook. We've read it. We understand it. Now it's just about countering it, developing the strategies that we need to make sure that they take no more ground in this nation, and that we take back the ground that they've stolen from us.
right on, brother? And this is contemporary here. We are watching, in my opinion, this is all subjective, it's all my opinion. We are watching the values of Western civilization aggressively being chipped away deliberately. History is being altered without resistance, and foundational structures are being torn down, exactly like what ISIS did in Syria. If you know what happened a couple of years ago before we stopped them, they went through historical, archaeological cities that, of course, were partly in ruins, but were a representation of what kind of history the country had in the past, and just blew them off the face of the map.
Yes,
So there's no history. When you
correct.
don't have history, all you can do is focus on the present.
Much like trying to remove, deface, destroy statues and monuments and things in this nation.
Exactly. That's my point. Control the past, control the future. And here's one of the most, well,
It's good.
here's one. In America, we've chiseled God's name off the record.
Whew.
This is a subtle reference. Maybe some people will recognize it. I explained it to some of my people. When a pharaoh died in Egypt, who had policies that were not acceptable by the people in control, uh, after he died, they went over to monuments and structures wherever his hieroglyphics or name was mentioned. They would chisel the name off of the wall, off of the monument. So, in essence, he's gone. We're not going to pay attention to this guy anymore. He never existed.
Wow.
That's what they did to God in the schools.
You're right. You're exactly right. That's very well put, Mike.
And we're getting to the end. So if our folks are kind of getting nervous or ready to go out and hit the refrigerator, hang in there, okay? Here's another aspect of what has been on my heart, and there will be further posts very much more specific in regard to this.
Good, good. Let's go. I like this.
Today's descriptions of manhood and womanhood are beyond blurred. They're all but erased. Talk about erasing.
Yeah.
I guess so-called gender fluidity makes it a whole lot easier to do so. So much for the male and female of Genesis 2. Remember, we all know as Christians, God created them male and female. Ironically, the only thing toxic about men is the attack on godly manhood. The qualities of honor, valor, loyalty, honesty, courage, integrity, charity, and selflessness are now disdained in favor of effeminate neutrality.
What do we say? I mean, what that hasn't been said? Um, it's absurdity. It's disgusting. It's sad. Children who can't get piercings or tattoos can have their genders changed and take life altering hormones and have surgeries, and it's insanity. We need to stop the insanity. We need to address the mental illness component of all of this, because these people need help, not just the teens and preteens that are going through this, but adults who are perpetuating these lies and who are ruining these kids. It's just not okay. And men and women alike need to stand up and say, no more. We're not doing this. And I think the pendulum is swinging, and I think that this election cycle is going to swing it even further. And this is going to be a it's going to be a very sad part of our history as we reflect back upon it 20 or 30 years from now, of what was done to these kids in the name of progressivism and trying to destroy a generation.
Well, if we have 20 or 30 years,
Yeah, good point.
another subject matter to discuss.
Sure.
A couple more paragraphs.
Yeah, go, man. We're fine. We got all day.
We're asking a lot of questions in this post.
Sure.
More questions. How can preteen, and this is a local reality.
It is. Yep.
How can preteens be out on the street at 3 a.m. killing each other without consequences because they can't be charged as an adult? That happened just a week or two ago in Omaha, Nebraska.
I was just having this talk with Allie. Even this morning, we were talking about that these children are allowed to run around and hurt and commit adult crimes with zero accountability, and it needs to freaking stop.
I had to be home when the street lights came on.
Yeah.
When I was in grade school, or even maybe later.
Sure.
How will they ever know about the Father in heaven who loves them, especially if they are fatherless at home? In his book titled Book of Manly Men, a great publication, Stephen Mansfield writes, and this is a quote, "The constant intrusion of government into the family structure in our nation has contributed dramatically to confusion about what God intends men to be. Looking for a model? Look at Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Un-
Amen.
Unfortunately, what I call casual Christianity, and this is a problem that should be addressed, casual Christianity has been passive about the slippery slope of our country into immorality. The Catholic Church used to publish movie ratings with grades from A to C, the latter meaning condemned, too vile to be viewed by its congregation. We had a publication when I was part of the Catholic Church. It would come to our home weekly. It was called The True Voice.
Hmm.
And in it, in one of the pages, I think it was a very back page, they listed the current movies that were being, shown in theaters, and they rated them just so you'd have an idea about, well, should we take the family to this? Should we let our kids go to this and whatever? There
Yeah.
was A's and B minus and whatever. And then there was some C's.
Hmm.
This was the time, nobody will even know who this person is, but there was a French gal who was a model and quite good looking in a obvious sexual way. Her name was Bridget Bardot.
Hell yeah. So what you're trying to say is, through your stammering there for whatever reason, is Bridget Bardot is freaking hot.
Yeah.
Okay. It's okay to say freaking hot on here. Doesn't
Okay.
make you less of a Christian.
Okay. And most of her, all of her movies, she appeared quite scantily clad. Nothing compared to what you can see in a public screening today. I mean, you can see,
Or walking down the street.
yeah, or at Walmart.
Right.
But you kind of get what I'm saying. There
Of
was
course.
obvious identification of this has gone too far.
Sure.
Have we descended into depravity too far? Have we become like Esau? You'll have to be a Bible person to understand this. He forfeiting our inheritance and beyond repentance. It took a flood to start over again the last time. God regretting the development of humanity and its blatant disregard for who is actually in charge of the cosmos.
Wow.
Esau was the firstborn to Jacob. Jacob, who was renamed Israel, had two sons, Jacob and Esau. And Jacob was he's literally called in the Bible the usurper, because he was jealous. They were twins, but Jacob was later. He wanted the blessing of, I'm sorry, yeah, Jacob and Esau were twins, and he wanted the favor of his father, but he couldn't get it without Esau. So he deceived his father into giving him the firstborn blessing, and Esau gave it up because of his living style made him pretty much a homeless person, and he exchanged his inheritance for a bowl of pudding, literally.
Yeah.
And he came to a point in his spirituality where he just couldn't repent anymore. That's possible. I think it's possible for a human being, a man, a woman, anybody, a nation. So here's the last thought. And I'm stating that if people can go just so far worshiping hedonism, which is a me only self gratification
Yes.
ideology. The quote is from Psalm 33, verse 12. It says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." Regarding the question posed at the beginning of this post, I rest my case. Where does that put us? Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. I don't think he is.
I would say that I agree with you. And that's why individually we have to be willing to not only proclaim, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, we also need to be able to take that beyond the four walls and the fence line of our homes, and we need to take that outside to church and then beyond church, and we need to live it out. We don't need to be judgy and condemning people, but we need to show them what a godly lifestyle looks like. We need to do our best. We need to be transparent. We need to be open about our flaws and our struggles. And we do that by living out what we believe in our heart, asking God for guidance. And I think it's the only way to bring the nation back. And then we need to have these discussions like you and I are having today. Everybody has a voice. I respect you so much for that you use your voice for things like this.
Well, I certainly hope I'm not coming off as some kind of self-righteous, priggy hypocrite. I'll be the first to tell you, well, if we were in private, I could give you a series of things in my life that were
Sure.
godly. But, it also says in the scripture, woe to those who call good evil and evil good.
Hmm.
There's no gray area in Christian living or in our life.
No.
The Old Testament is full of two categories, the righteous and the wicked, and they are called out by the prophets over and over and over again. So
Yeah.
am I supposed to just sit here and say, oh, well, maybe things will get better? No, I can't do that. And believe me, I'm not putting myself above anyone,
Yeah,
but
same. I think that comes across, and I feel the same. People that know me know I've got my stuff, and I'm certainly not perfect, but they also know that I have a heart and a love for Christ. The first
I
thing we can do is we got to get our vote out and going, bud. We got to have these discussions in these next couple of months as we have an election coming up in this country. And every 4 years, I hear the same line, but I think it's very pertinent this cycle. This could be the most
oh,
important election.
yeah. That's what Trump said just yesterday. It's going to be, yeah.
Who knows? But dude, you know what? It was so good. I, I've I think it's your best blog post that I've read. I think it's very upfront. You're not holding back. I think it should spark some conversation, which is key to bringing the nation back to the godly, I guess, standard that we believe it should have. I think conversations like this are hugely important. They're crucial, especially as we move towards election time. I would ask you to again tell the audience, in case they have forgotten, they didn't write it down, and they've hung with us till the end here. Tell them how specifically they can go find your stuff.
Okay. It is titled crossingpaths.net. And I titled it that because somewhat even influenced by our former pastor at Lifegate Trinity, Les Beecham, had on many occasions, and this is a spiritual principle that obviously I believe in quite firmly, about divine appointments or intersections where
Hmm.
there's no coincidences in life. I don't believe that you can encounter somebody, whether it's a neighbor or somebody at the grocery store, even somebody at church at a meeting or whatever. It's an opportunity to, in this two paths that cross, to discuss the realities of life. There's a lot of folks out there that are going to get ready to talk about the Huskers and the new season and the movies that you've seen. The political topic is going to be on everybody's, discussion. All that's going to go. It's done. And I've told this to young men, especially that I've met up with and wanted to have a discipleship arrangement with or whatever.
Yeah.
Why would I discuss things that really don't matter with you and never mention eternal realities?
Yeah.
I'm not going to stand there on judgment day with you standing next to me and Jesus says to you, depart from me because I don't know you. What? I
Yeah.
could talk to this guy?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. No,
It,
you're right. I love that you have that heart for discipleship, and it's important for sure. Dude, I tell you what, we're about at an hour, and this is good. I want to throw. I didn't hear you say it again.
we have 45 seconds, 40, 30 seconds to go, 20.
Well, we can go as long as we want.
Now,
We don't have a lot of rules here. I want to plug next week's podcast as I have you on here because you and I have had these discussions a lot. Um, we talk about preparedness and the eventualities of civil unrest and things that could bring on martial law, and what happens if the grid goes down for a stretch of time. um, Next week's show that comes out on the 10th September, it talks about um, uh, from a book. I go over a book by Annie Jacobson called Nuclear War, and I specifically talk about an EMP. And Annie Jacobson runs a scenario of an EMP being exploded over Omaha, Nebraska,
Wow.
and it's
Wow.
astounding. And I think you're going to find it very interesting. And I think the audience will as well. And I get in and out. It's pretty short. It's a solo cast, but I'm telling you, man, you got to check this out. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts and the audience's thoughts, because this stuff's all tying together. We're looking at, are we facing the demise of our republic? And what we think of these domestic enemies that we're so focused on. We
Yeah.
forget we also still have foreign enemies that would love nothing more than our destruction, and they see our vulnerabilities that are brought on by all the nonsense that you brought up today. They're laughing at us, and they see this as opportunity strategically to take us out. And I think we're forgetting that as we're worried about pronouns and flags and
Yeah.
DEI and all this other nonsense. So I think these two shows, so this one on the 3rd and then the 10th, I think they tie in well together. And
Yeah.
so I'd like to hear what the audience has to say about these views and the direction of our country. Do you have
Well,
anything you want to finish up with, or are you good to roll, brother?
I just want to comment on that statement you made about internal problems. If you listen to the news, they're talking about the Venezuelan gangs who are in the process of taking over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado.
Did you watch the footage?
Yes,
Astounding.
Aurora, Colorado. What a safe, comfortable, beautiful suburb. Just it's part of a Denver suburb.
Other than it's not, because it's a sanctuary city that's
Yeah,
run by crazed progressive liberals, and Denver's turning into a shithole like all the other blue run areas in the country, pardon my French. And this is the fruit of that. Try that crap here in our community.
don't know.
I know. I know that there's enough patriots in our community that aren't going to stand for it. And we also don't welcome gang members and illegal immigrants here and give them money to stay here as a sanctuary city and tell the border enforcement folks that they are not allowed to do anything to them here. That's what sanctuary cities are. It's even illegal to report them to ICE. So sanctuary cities like Denver and Chicago and San Francisco, in my estimation, they're starting to harvest the fruit that they planted. So we'll see how that goes for them. But this is going to take a big pendulum swing, because people aren't going to stand for this.
Yeah, and finally, I'll put a plug into people just waiting on the end of their seat for my next post.
Great. When is it?
I don't know when I'm going to do it. I'm working on one right now, polishing it off. The title of it is "Are You a Man or a Mouse?" That's going to go real hard. And I'm also working on I want to talk about immigration.
Good.
My maternal grandparents came here in the 1914, 1915, and went through a process of assimilation in Omaha, Nebraska, went through Ellis Island.
Yeah.
And my ultimate comment on that is going to be how things have changed.
Nice. So you've got the next couple in the works, and now we just got to get you sitting at the keyboard and figuring out how to get them out to everybody, right?
Going to do it.
That's the next thing. Michael, I appreciate you so much. You're a great dude. I value your friendship, and I love you, brother. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.